When love is truly aligned with God's plan, one of the first and most profound signs you'll notice is the presence of inner peace. It's not the kind of fleeting peace that depends on perfect circumstances or uninterrupted happiness, but a steady, quiet calm that sits beneath the surface, even when the relationship goes through ordinary human challenges. This kind of peace is different from the temporary thrill of infatuation or the anxious energy that comes when we try to control love according to our own timeline. Instead, it is a deep reassurance, a knowing that doesn't shout, but whispers with unwavering certainty. This is good. This is safe. This is right. Psychologically, this peace comes from congruence. When our values, emotions, and actions align with something meaningful and true. In relationships that are forced or rushed, the mind is often at war with the heart. One moment, it feels secure. The next, it is plagued with doubts and fears, endlessly replaying scenarios to predict the outcome. But when love is part of a divine design, it does not feed confusion. It dissolves it. Even in moments of uncertainty, there is a baseline of clarity because the foundation isn't built on scarcity or desperation, but on purpose and mutual respect. That doesn't mean there will never be questions. Healthy relationships still require discernment and effort. But the difference is that the questions don't shake your core. They invite honest conversation rather than obsessive overthinking. From a spiritual perspective, this peace reflects the nature of God himself. Scripture often describes God as a God of order, not of chaos. When he orchestrates a connection, he doesn't do so to torment you with constant ambiguity. There may be seasons of waiting, moments where you're called to trust rather than see, but the relationship will carry a tone of calmness that feels like coming home. It's a peace that quiets the restless search for validation. A peace that says, you don't have to perform or manipulate to be loved. That is the kind of peace the human soul recognizes as divine. Interestingly, many people miss this sign because they expect love to feel dramatic, almost cinematic. They think if there are no extreme highs and lows, no wild chase, no emotional turbulence, then it must not be real. Yet that turbulence often comes from fear-based attachment, not from something healthy and enduring, real. God-aligned love doesn't thrive on chaos. It flourishes in stability. The nervous system relaxes. The heart opens slowly but surely. You begin to make decisions not out of panic about losing someone, but out of a desire to nurture what's growing. This is why discernment is so critical in the early stages of any relationship. Ask yourself, is this connection bringing me more peace or more confusion? Is my mind constantly spinning with what ifs and maybe they will change? Or do I sense a quiet trust in the process? Peace doesn't mean the absence of effort. It means the absence of unnecessary torment. There will still be work, communication, and growth, but the work will feel like investment, not survival. So, when you're trying to understand whether love is truly part of God's plan, don't just look for the fireworks. Look for the stillness. Look for that gentle assurance that sits in your chest when you're with them. that sense that you can exhale. Because love that is divinely aligned doesn't exhaust you into submission. It invites you into rest. And in a world full of noise and pressure, sometimes the clearest sign that it's right is that for the first time in a long time, your soul finally feels quiet. When love aligns with God's plan, it does something far greater than satisfy your longing for companionship. It transforms you. It calls both people into a space of growth that is not superficial or one-sided, but deeply mutual. You begin to notice that the relationship doesn't merely exist to fulfill an emotional need. It becomes a place where both individuals are invited to stretch beyond their comfort zones, to confront their limitations, and to become more of who they were meant to be. This is a profound distinction because many relationships operate in a cycle of stagnation or unconscious patterns where one or both partners resist change. But love designed by God has a refining quality. It does not demand perfection before acceptance, but it also does not let you remain unchanged. Psychologically, this growth is born from a secure connection. When there is trust, the mind does not waste its energy on constant fear of abandonment or rejection. Instead, that energy is freed for self-development, for becoming more patient, more empathetic, more resilient. A God-centered relationship creates a safe container where both people can bring their flaws into the light without fear of being unloved because of them. And this is crucial. Growth does not happen in environments of constant criticism or control. It happens where love is steady enough to hold the uncomfortable parts of you while still encouraging you to rise above them. This transformative process also reshapes the very definition of love. It shifts from the shallow narrative that love is about finding someone who completes you to the deeper understanding that love is about partnering with someone who complements your journey and challenges you to become whole on your own. It's less about dependency and more about interdependence. You begin to see that the healthiest love stories are not built on two people clinging to each other for identity, but on two individuals walking toward God and in doing so, drawing closer to each other. From a spiritual perspective, this makes perfect sense. God's purpose for relationships has always been bigger than just romance. It is about refining character, shaping purpose, and revealing aspects of His love through human connection. That is why relationships that truly come from Him often feel like they are working on you from the inside out. They stretch your patience when your instinct is to withdraw. They expand your capacity for forgiveness when your pride wants to hold on to offense. They inspire you to dream bigger, to serve more selflessly, to build something that impacts more than just your own world. This is also where discomfort plays its rightful role. Growth is rarely comfortable, and a divinely aligned relationship will not shield you from that truth. It will, however, ensure that the discomfort leads somewhere meaningful. Toward healing, toward maturity, toward love that is more enduring because it has been tested and refined. The question then becomes, does this relationship leave you smaller, more guarded, more bitter, Or does it leave you wiser, softer, stronger? If you find yourself in a love that makes you want to rise higher, that calls forth qualities you didn't even know you were capable of living out. Pay attention. That is often the fingerprint of the divine at work. Because when love is right in God's eyes, it will not simply feel good, it will make you good. And that kind of transformation is never accidental. It is the evidence of something sacred shaping you, not just for the sake of romance, but for the sake of who you are becoming. One of the most misunderstood elements of love, especially when we talk about it in the context of God's plan, is timing. Many people confuse urgency with alignment, thinking that if something doesn't happen when they want it, it must not be right, or worse, that it will never happen. But divine timing does not cater to impatience. It operates on a rhythm that considers your preparation, your purpose, and even the unseen circumstances that must come together for the relationship to flourish. When love is truly part of God's plan, it does not arrive as a response to pressure, yours or anyone else's. It comes as a fulfillment of purpose at the moment when both hearts and lives are ready to receive it. Psychologically, this is where surrender becomes essential. Human nature wants control. It wants to predict, to manage, to force outcomes so that uncertainty feels less threatening. But love that is rushed into existence often carries the residue of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of missing out, fear of not measuring up to cultural timelines or the expectations of others. Those fears create relationships built on haste rather than discernment. In contrast, when love aligns with God's timing, it arrives with a different energy, not a frantic scramble to secure it, but a steady unfolding that makes room for clarity and choice. This kind of timing also respects seasons. There are times in your life when a relationship, even a good one, would distract you from critical growth or pull you off course from something foundational you need to build first. There are other times when your heart is ready, but the other person's life is still being prepared. God's timing takes into account both sides, not just your longing. That's why patience in love is not passive waiting. It is active trust. It is choosing not to compromise your values or settle for less just because the calendar says you should be further along. Philosophically, this idea invites us to question what we consider late. We live in a culture that idolizes immediacy, fast results, instant connections, quick resolutions. But what if being delayed is actually being preserved? What if the waiting is the very thing that ensures that when love comes, it does not break you but builds you? When you see time as a servant rather than an enemy, the waiting becomes part of the miracle rather than an obstacle to it. So, when it comes to love, do not measure its rightness by its speed. Measure it by its fruit, its stability, and its ability to align with the broader story God is writing in your life. The right relationship will not ask you to betray your becoming just to have it sooner. It will meet you where your growth has prepared you to stand. And sometimes the most profound act of faith is simply this: to wait without shrinking, to trust without forcing, and to believe that what is truly meant for you will never arrive too late. Many people wait for extraordinary signs to confirm that a relationship is meant to be. The dramatic coincidences, the unexpected encounters, the moments that feel like fate stepping into the room. While those moments can be beautiful and even encouraging, they are not the truest measure of whether love is aligned with God's plan. What truly reveals divine alignment is not a single spectacular sign, but the consistent fruit the relationship bears over time. It is the steady presence of respect, the ongoing practice of honesty, the small but meaningful choices that show care when no one else is watching. Real love does not need constant spectacle to prove itself. It proves itself in the ordinary. Psychologically, this is because our brains are wired to seek novelty and heightened emotional cues. What feels dramatic often feels meaningful. But meaning is rarely built in a single moment. It is constructed through repeated patterns. A person can say all the right words in the beginning, create the illusion of something profound, and still lack the substance to sustain it. That is why looking for consistency is so powerful. Consistency is the bridge between intention and integrity. It reveals what someone truly values. When the initial excitement fades, spiritually, this mirrors how God works. He rarely speaks only through lightning bolts and burning bushes. More often, his voice is found in the steady whisper, in the quiet faithfulness of everyday provision, in the way something good continues to grow without manipulation or force. A relationship that carries his fingerprint reflects this same rhythm. It does not rely on constant reassurance because its foundation is already sound. Trust builds not through grand promises, but through the lived reality of commitment and care. This also frees you from the trap of emotional chasing, waiting for a sign. Every time you doubt, needing an external miracle to make an internal decision. Instead, you begin to ask, does this relationship consistently honor my values? Does it nurture both of us spiritually and emotionally? Does it produce patience, kindness, humility, qualities that last beyond infatuation? When the answer is yes, you often find that you no longer need the fireworks. The fruit speaks for itself. So if you are discerning love right now, look less at the intensity of beginnings and more at the reliability of the middle. Look at how someone shows up on the ordinary days, how they handle disappointment, how they treat you when no one is watching. The grand signs may get your attention, but it is the consistent fruit that will keep your heart safe. Because when love is truly from God, its proof is not in how loud it announces itself, but in how quietly and faithfully it endures. And perhaps the most profound sign you will ever receive is this: you no longer have to question if it is real. You simply live it.